Good morning. Welcome to the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for September 21st, 2023. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the Planning Commission agenda today, there are speaker request forms along the table on the left wall. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the staff seated on the left of the dais. At this time, we would also like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hall so the meeting is not disrupted. Items 1 through 8 have been placed on the consent calendar and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the city council. The city council will make the final decision with the exception of the following item. Item 8, 23 PD 25. The Rapid City Planning Commission action on this item is final unless any party appeals that decision to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Department of Community Development by close of business on the 7th full calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 8 that staff would like removed for separate consideration?
Number 8, please.
Are there any items 1 through 8 that any planning commissioner would like removed? Then are there any items that any audience member would like removed for separate consideration? I do have a speaker request that identifies Caitlin subdivision. Is that number 8?
Yes.
Okay. The chair would then entertain a motion to approve items 1 through 7 with the exception of item number 3. So that's 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Motion to approve items 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 in accordance with staff's stipulations outlined in the report.
Thanks, Vince. Vince made the motion and Karen seconded that motion to approve those items per staff recommendation. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3. Haven? Is this
I just had a clarification, I guess, or wanted a clarification on a few issues. There was an issue, I think, with the access in and out, the current level of the streets going in and out of the subdivision. And then a little further explanation. This appears to be an application for some tiny homes, which I think is a great idea. So just kind of wanted a little more information on that part of the application.
Vicki?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is a requirement that they submit a traffic impact study with the development engineering plan, which is step 2 of a 3-step plating process. In addition, the applicants have been working with the city on the steps necessary to improve Reservoir Road from Homestead Street north through this project. There was some deference by City Council of other developers having to improve Reservoir Road north of this parcel. And for this development to be successful, we need Reservoir Road improved adjacent to those previously subdivided parcels. So with the use of a South Dakota grant dollars and TIF dollars, we anticipate that improvement will come forward, and that'll be a collaborative effort between the city and the applicant. The access points directly onto Reservoir Road have been reviewed and approved by our engineering division. Please bear with us. Todd Pekosh is no longer with us. He has taken employment elsewhere. So Roger Hall, the city engineer, will be filling in, but he's also kicking off another meeting next door and will get here just as fast as he can. We too are excited about the concept of this being somewhat of an experimental subdivision. There are 156 lots, with 83 of them being smaller than the required 6,500 square feet. And in addition, we have seen some layouts demonstrating that there will be smaller footprint homes on those lots. They'll continue to meet all setbacks. They'll provide the 2 off-street parking. The goal is to build affordable housing. And that means bring these in where they're under $200,000 so that you own your home and you own the lot that's underneath it. So again, with this approval, they will be required to bring forward a planned development, and you will then see what those homes look like and how they lay out and how the dynamics work. Visitor parking in the street will also be something that they'll have to provide. And then with the next step of the plating process, we'll actually see a traffic impact study. Does that answer your question?
Yes, some of them, I guess. And so the street to the north will be improved not only by this developer, but other developers will be required to chip in?
Kip's bringing up the aerial so that we know exactly what you're talking about. The part of Reservoir Road that I have been discussing is, there you go, thank you. So they're responsible to improve Reservoir Road as it abuts the subject property. So as you see the yellow along Reservoir Road, they're responsible for it. Once that property line diverts to the east, that portion of Reservoir Road south of there doesn't abut their property, but it too needs to be improved. And so again, the city is working with the applicant to ensure that that improvement all the way to Homestead Street is completed before we issue certificates of occupancy for residential lots in this area.
And then 2 other issues. You alluded to the lot size. What's the status of our ordinance, and what's required for approval of lots of this size?
That goes to the discussion of the planned development. We currently require 6,500 square feet per lot. Some of these lots are closer to 4,000 square feet. So the applicant is aware that before he can final plat this, creating the lots for transfer of sale, he would need to submit a planned development application. And then through the planned development, the Planning Commission has the authority to grant exceptions to the land area regulations, lot size being one of them.
And there's a lot of lots here jammed into a very small space without any open area or park area. What's their access then to open area and park area?
Each lot will be limited to 30% lot coverage, so everyone will have a backyard and a front yard. As far as whether or not there's going to be a public park, the numbers of 156 lots doesn't truly trigger that discussion, even though there's discussion from some members of City Council, glad that we have one here in the audience today, about maybe changing our regulations so that we can require a developer when they bring in those master plans, and maybe that number is 400 lots. If you're going to do 400 lots in a specific area, that you have to plat a park and then either secure maintenance of it through the city park department or create a homeowners association to secure that. Right now, it is not required. Typically, if someone comes in and they ask for a TIF for any of those financial improvements that are regional in nature, that opens up our ability to discuss with them about, this is great, but if there's money in the TIF, let's get some land donated for a park as well.
All right, good questions, Haven. Any other comments or questions on item number 3 from the commission? All right. Mike Gallagher made the motion to approve item number 3 with stipulations. And Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item was pulled for 2 reasons. 1, so that Kelly can abstain. And 2, because we did receive a letter of concern about drainage in association not only with this project, but just in the creation of the platted subdivision in this area known as Caitlin's Sub. The adjacent property owner is here, and I know he would like to speak to this item today. Perhaps we start there, and then we go to the applicant's engineer, who's also in the audience and would like to speak to this item today.
Okay, I have a speaker request from Terrell Adams. If you'd like to come up to the microphone over here. Also Zoe Adams, if you'd like to, you're both welcome to come up. Once you're at the microphone, just identify yourself with your name so we have it for our records.
Hi, I'm Terrell Adams. I have 10 acres that's just on the south edge, and my neighbor Keith has the other 5 acres, and then Charlie has the other 5 acres to the north. So we have collectively 20 acres involved in this. Collectively, Keith and I have lived there for almost 100 years, 40, 50 years each, and we've never had these problems. I mean, there's been a lot of rain and things like that, but the natural environment has always taken care of it. I have pictures I sent. I don't know if you can show them or not, but I'd like you to see them. That's what we're wanting to present to you. What's that?
This one works.
How's that? Okay. Well, we've had quite a bit of damage this summer in terms of thousands of dollars of the washing out the road, as the pictures show. And we have a river going across our backyard. All the water off this project now drains right into our backyard and down through our pasture. The road is underwater, both roads. This is my front yard in a normal situation. And the last time after the rain, this is what it looked like. This is the backyard looking kind of northwest there towards the project, and then this is the flowing coming across our yard. There's no accommodation for any drainage that we can determine.
That's it.
Is there another picture too?
That's it.
I think my neighbor didn't get his in time, but his are a little worse than my pictures. But that's about all I have to say, is we are concerned about this. And it's getting worse. They haven't even done the project yet. So the amount of runoff off these new roads and the new roofs and everything is a real troubling matter for us.
Thank you. That the pictures, as usual, say 1,000 words. Vicki, I don't have a request from the applicant's engineer.
It's Jeremy with KTM. If we could have him present some information on the drainage and their plan in addressing this.
Well, real quick before that, my name is Zoe Adams.
Sure.
And I did notice on their plans that they were going to grade all of the water straight towards my father's property. When they started developing, they already took out one of the flood dams. And they do have plans on replacing it, but I am concerned about that because they're going to put in 36 apartment buildings. And usually when there's like a pool, it has to be fenced off or something for kids. But also if that overflows, it'll just go right back to our property. And I would like to suggest regrading it to go west instead of towards our property.
Okay, thank you.
Renee Catron with KTM Design.
Jeremy Schnell with KTM Design.
I'd like to first comment on the public comment written letter is incorrect. It states that KTM and Mr. Kraft both have caused this flooding, and Mr. Kraft just purchased the property, and we have just been hired by Mr. Kraft. So the original developer is who did the construction in the area, not KTM. Just wanted to clarify that. Can you put this on? Sure. I want the overhead.
So I guess just to address some of the concerns that the residents had. So like they mentioned, our plan for the apartments does have a drainage pond on it that's gonna attenuate back any runoff coming off back to the historic standards. And then, like as for the buildings and stuff like that, we planned on, you know, piping those into storm sewer, which is then gonna have it flow into that pond that's gonna be on site. Like they said, you know, a lot of this problem that they're running into is occurring right now, and we haven't even built anything on the lot. As you can see, like, so these are the 2015 contours from Rapid Map, and you can see that there's a,
This is the driveway of the pictures.
yeah,
Right here.
and there's a historic drainage channel that's called out in the drainage basin design plan done by Rapid City. This is in the Box Elder drainage basin. This is one of the major elements that just runs through this particular subbasin. So I guess I would say that it just looks like they should have always been having problems with flow, because this big channel runs right through their driveway.
Mrs. Adams, if you want to comment, you got to do it from the microphone. Vicki, did you have something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Number one, we always appreciate when property owners in the area bring these things to our attention. This is how many times the city learns of this situation. I think Renee is correct. KTM has not had their finger on this project when this subdivision was platted and the streets and utilities and everything were put in. I think that really goes to the concerns what we're hearing expressed today. As a part of this one lot being developed, there is a stipulation that they will need to bring in a drainage report showing how they're capturing the drainage from this lot and detaining it on site to ensure that any flow and volume of flow that comes from the property is at those historic rates. Development cannot increase the drainage onto an adjacent property. We may have another issue just bigger than this one lot. Roger Hall, who, as I shared previously, is stuck next door in another meeting, wanted me to share with you that this having been brought to their attention as well, they will take a look at this. This is in the Box Elder drainage basin. There is a detention cell that has been designed to accommodate those natural drainage flows. There will be drainage through this site. That is the way that the terrain is naturally, but to the property owner next door's comments, though that amount and the rate of that amount should not change just because the adjacent property is developed. So certainly the city engineering division will be looking at this, and then as part of securing a building permit for the apartment development on this one lot, they will need to have to address that drainage issue, but only specific to their lot. They won't have to go back and look at the whole subdivision. That's something the city will have to do.
Excuse me.
Gotcha. Mrs. Adams, yes.
Yes, this does not just affect one lot. The lot completely right next to it gets flooded, and that next one gets flooded. And this has never been a problem. Growing up in the neighborhood, we had lots of stock dams back there that never overflowed. And there's a 20-foot ditch that's never overflowed until this last summer. They took out the stock dam when they started developing it, and that's one of the big problems, and that's probably gonna be the last thing that they put in when they're all done. But that stock dam's always gonna be full of water, and as soon as it rains, it's gonna flood.
Not only that, but that's quite a ways up the hill from us. So they have to consider the drainage below that area.
Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
I think the reference to one lot is the lot in question that's being developed.
Right.
Not the lots that are
Okay.
being
Yeah.
flooded. the struggle we have as a commission is we just have an application on this single apartment lot, but what Vicky's explaining is that the issues may be coming from other previously developed lots. And it's tough on the commission to have to consider that
Yeah.
distinction. Vicky?
Renee, while you're there, can you just use your finger and show that natural drainage area? So you can kind of follow the contours. That is the area that the city will have to study as a whole and take a look at. So as development occurred, we'll need to look at that to ensure that when Caitlin's subdivision was subdivided, or what other development has occurred in the area, to ensure that those volumes of drainage onto your property or all properties affected by that natural drainage channel.
Right,
are
that's,
returned
I,
use.
I agree with you, that is the original drainage. But now we're getting it through the field, which is on the, north of us to my neighbors. And that's down the other road down, and I don't have the pictures here, oh, he has them. But, I mean, it's, the drainage now is going across the field, it's not going down the natural area. And I can, you know, my road is not the end of the world, but now we've opened up a whole new channel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Charlie Carmen. I live 2 properties over from Mr. Adams here. So this is Mr. Adams' house. This would be the Storm's house, and my house is right here. This is natural drainage that all goes through my house and has
Can you talk
washed.
into the mic?
I'm sorry, has washed my driveway out twice this year. I've spent countless hours and thousands of dollars fixing it this year alone. I think most of the problem is not necessarily the development in question. I agree. I think it might be part of the problem, but again, you guys just purchased it and you didn't actually do anything yet, so.
Just to state, we have not moved one thimble
That,
of
yeah,
dirt.
so.
Well, there's
It-
new roads out there, after all.
That is not us.
Well,
The
Hey,
biggest problem.
Mr. Adams, we gotta just have one person talking at a time. I'm sorry. We gotta keep it that way.
Too much of the natural flow from back up in here has been diverted back this way to this and can no longer go to the main channel that's right here that it always went to and needs to go to. And I have pictures here of my property as well. Do you want me to throw them down? Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Vicky?
could I get this gentleman's address, please?
My address,
Uh-huh.
4525 Haynes Avenue. And I have a letter for you guys that I'll submit to. I'm just unaware of the process because I'm a newbie.
No worries there. I've got a planning commissioner that wants to speak. I'm gonna go to him for
Okay.
now. Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious on these photos that the homeowners are showing. What dates were these taken?
I don't have exact dates, honestly, on any of them.
Okay, so, and one of the comments I heard was that that you were saying that it only happened this summer. It hasn't, this hasn't happened in the past, prior to this summer?
It happened last year, too.
So,
It has happened. I've lived at my property for 5 years, and it's only happened in the last 2 years. And this year was really, really bad, and some of the rainstorms, based on the amount of rain that we got, did not warrant the flow that I got.
okay, sir, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Vicky?
it would be helpful if we did have a city engineer in the room, so I'm gonna punt, not being an engineer, but just note that, for the audience's sake, we've had numerous subdivisions of property in this area. And what that means is they've come in, they create lots, they get approval to put in streets, curb, gutter, sidewalk, streetlight conduit, water, sewer, storm sewer, and then those lots get sold. Then home builders come in. There is a mass grading plan and drainage plan that's in place. Not all home builders respect that plan, and they start moving dirt around to increase building envelopes, make more level backyards. This is an ongoing issue that we're having in the city, is that it undoes the drainage plan that the original engineer had in place Because the city's not gonna sign off on construction plans to put in streets and utilities if it's gonna create additional drainage issues from historic flows on adjacent properties or in natural drainage ways. Knowing that this has obviously occurred, and thank you for sharing that you've experienced this for over 2 years, because we've just had a steady growth of additional lots in this area. I will have the city engineer view, oh, here he is right now, but the testimony that's been given today, that can be viewed by the city engineering division, and we can certainly take a look at this in a more holistic fashion. It is really not specific to this one lot and what they want to do on it.
Right.
This is an existing problem. Now, your comment today brings it to the city's attention and makes sure that whatever is done on this one lot doesn't add to the issue, but this one lot is not going to correct the issue. So this has been a great conversation. We really appreciate that all of you took time today to come to the meeting, and this is going to take some time and involvement from the city before we can start finding some solution.
Yeah, I guess I would echo, now that Roger's here, if he could be willing to stick around, and if you all are willing to stick around
Yeah.
to talk to him
Yeah.
on the other properties not being currently considered that affect the drainage on your property.
Mr. Chair?
Vicky?
Having said that, the item before you today is to allow a 36-unit apartment development, 3 buildings. It must meet all design area regulations, and there is a stipulation of approval that does require that they address the drainage that they're creating as a part of their development to ensure that it's maintained at historic flows. So we'll be looking for that as a part of that building permit. And then in the meantime, I think you summed it up beautifully, what we need to do to work with the area property owners.
Mike Quasney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along with that, although they are not responsible for what has happened before, I would assume that we would also look at, as they're making their plans, if we could tie in somehow to alleviate some of the problem, I mean, work it out so that whatever they do won't add to the problem, but maybe there's a way that it can help to solve the problem also, if they design it a certain way. And I hope we look at that as well.
Mr. Chair,
Vicky?
there's also a stipulation that requires an erosion and sediment control plan. And even though that wasn't specifically mentioned today, that in many instances is an issue as well. When development happens and we don't get the necessary coverage on property so that we don't have bare ground for any length of time. And that's when, if there is runoff, now we've got silt and other materials on adjacent properties. So for the development of this site, now that we're working specifically with the developer of this lot, we can ensure that they submit the drainage and erosion control plan and that they implement that plan before they're issued a certificate of occupancy to actually use the property as Planning Commission deems appropriate.
All right, so the question before us is an initial and final plan development overlay for the apartment complex as Vicky described. Any further comments or questions on this application? Vince?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I don't know, and I'm not trying to clear up anything at this moment because, but I do have some concerns because if this is the first year or the second year that this kind of water retention has happened in this area. I mean, maybe if Roger can give me some kind of ideas why this all of a sudden, I shouldn't say all of a sudden, why this has only happened in the last 2 years. Is there, if I can get that explained to me?
Roger, can we put you on the spot here?
Yeah, put me on the spot's the correct term. As Vicky probably explained, the loss of Todd is a challenge to us here. Can you repeat your question? Vince?
Sure,
You're
yeah,
asking
and
why
Roger,
why it's changed recently? Is that, make sure I understand?
Right, I'm not looking for a definite answer, not necessarily one specific to this location, but the homeowners have been living in this area for years. They grew up there, and only in the last 2 years has this type of water retention has happened in this area. What causes something like that?
Well, as I'm assuming Vicki explained, we have procedures. When we go through a development process, one of the things we require the developers to provide on-site detention and stuff like that. Clearly, as everybody knows, as property develops, the runoff increases in streets and roads and such. We are encouraging all of our developers to build the detention facilities first prior to that. That way we can control the runoff, especially during construction, and control the sediment and erosion. If Renee probably explained that this is a natural drainage way, and we are seeing increased flows. We have seen a lot of runoff this year that we haven't seen in the past. This is across the whole area. We have had increased rain this year particularly, which has caused some of this. A quick glance of this shows that this downstream property, the channel is there. I just reading the gentleman's letter very quickly, it appears that the flows have increased, and I'd have to dig into it some more. But the bottom line is, when we do a plan, a subdivision plan, and whether whoever the engineer is, and our engineers look at it to make sure that we're not increasing the flows beyond what's in the drainage basin design plan. We have drainage basin design plans for every one of these basins, right? And we look at those as part of our review process. And if there's elements required, what we call elements, and elements can be, culverts or box culverts, crossings, detention ponds, we require the developer to install those. And we want to be fairly strict on those, because if we're not, these problems tend to exacerbate, all right?
Okay.
So, but fundamentally right now, we've had development upstream. Not all the detention facilities are in. Knowing this area, it seems like there were some stock dams up there previously, and those may or may not be in place anymore. I'm not as familiar with this as I should be. I apologize. But
okay.
This is a challenge. I'll just say that. We got to make sure that we're doing things right and taking care of our citizens.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Excuse me, if I may.
Mrs. Adams, yeah.
Yes, this is a project that Caitlin's subdivision started back in 2021. And the first thing they did was take out the stock dam and take out some of the natural low-lying areas where the water could run. And I noticed when they called the paperwork for the meeting, there was no current topography picture aerial of what they've actually done, and you can't really see how much they've changed it already with just the roads and the utilities in place. So the question was, why is it happening in the last 2 years? And that is my answer.
Yes.
Okay.
Karen, I got your light on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a development that has brought to light all the issues out there, not just this development, but all the ones in the previous. And I think this is going to be a challenge for the city, because now you've got property that belongs not to the city that had stock dams on it, for instance, and can't just go back and say to some property owner, I'm putting a stock dam on your place, and maybe there's a house there now. So it's going to be something difficult to do, but I think if we don't do anything, if we say, no, we don't want this development going, that the properties are still going to have that drainage. It's still going to be a problem. So this is bringing to light a way to fix it, hopefully. And I think whether you have this new development or not, it's still going to be there. So my thinking is that I think this is a positive to go forward with this, so that allows the new development to make sure that that drainage is contained, but also to have some way to fix it. And it's going to be a challenge, as Roger said, on how to fix that. But I think without doing anything, it's still going to be there. So this, going forward, I think is the right thing to do, so that it gets fixed. is my comment. So, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Haven?
Well, there does seem to be some serious issues here, and I just wanted to clarify then, approval of this request this morning by the commission here, still, the applicant still is required, obviously, to get a building permit. And I note in here they provide, one of the stipulations is that they provide a drainage report. There's no more requirement apparently than providing a drainage report. Otherwise, I guess that's my question. What additional steps must be taken if this is approved by the commission here this morning in order to get this project underway?
Vicki?
Mr. Chair, so the stipulations requiring both drainage and erosion and sediment control plans and reports, those have to be approved by the city engineering division. We will determine whether or not they comply with the Box Elder drainage basin, our drainage plan requirements set forth by ordinance. So it's not just that they can say this is going to work. Roger and his team look at it and they determine that it's going to work. Again, as I mentioned previously, the development of this lot, holding this up is not going to address the bigger picture that we have. We've got other upstream issues. I think the fact that the neighborhood showed up today, had this discussion, we see this often in that the original developer of the subdivision, in all good faith, they hire an engineering firm, which in this case was different than KTM. They submit a drainage plan to show how they're going to mass grade the proposed lots and bring in all of the infrastructure, create detention ponds, and it works. And the city engineering division does not sign off on that final plat or those construction plans to build that infrastructure until those issues have been addressed. But then the lots start selling. And once that happens, then sometimes the terrain changes, detention elements get altered, and we end up in a situation like this. This being brought to our attention, there may be instances where we're going to have to reach out to individual lot owners saying, you took out a drainage element, you need to now put it back. And in doing so, and we can go back to the original drainage plan that addressed this, we have a means to bring the flows on the lots that you've seen today in pictures and testimony back to those pre-developed historic flows that they were prior to 2 years ago.
Haven, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just another question. It doesn't show on any of the pictures, but if I'm not mistaken, there are apartments on the north side of this on Chalkstone. So I guess my point is that this is a continuation of other multi-family buildings in that area.
I know that's correct.
Yeah, well, I was hoping that Alex would just speak to the fact that this is zoned for either single family or multifamily in areas along this section. So yes, there is a blend, and that goes to the diversity of land development that we promote in our city, where we do want to have multifamily and single family merged together instead of creating that exclusionary housing design that segregates our community. So this lot is an extension of that, but it is adjacent to single family development, which is what we desire.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that clarify that Roger was not commenting on this specific project when he answered my questions about what causes this kind of retention. And I agree with Karen that, and of course Vicki, that this could actually lead to solving other problems if this is approved. So I'm looking forward to voting yes.
Roger?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said it earlier as I walked in, and I apologize for being late, but 2 meetings scheduled at the same time. I'd like all the landowners to stick around afterwards, and I'd like to meet with you guys afterwards and discuss this and make sure that we're on the same page and then we can develop a path moving forward, okay? And thank you, Vince, for defending me there as a general comment, not a specific comment.
Thank you, Roger. I appreciate you doing that. It's not something that I think we can require, but it's definitely appreciated, I know.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
Motion to approve of the initial and final plan development overlay to allow an apartment complex with stipulations outlined in the project report.
all right, Vince made the motion. Is there a second to that motion? Karen seconded the motion. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries with Kelly abstaining. Item number 9.
Good morning, Planning Commission. Kip Harrington, Long Range Planning. Item number 9 is 23 UR 024, which is a conditional use permit to allow an oversized garage. You may recall you saw this at your September last Planning Commission meeting, whatever the date was there, I believe September 4th. Sorry, it's a little brain freeze there. And this was continued to allow us to work with the applicant to come up with some ideas on the design of the oversized garage. And exactly the day after that Planning Commission meeting, we were able to meet with the applicant. We were able to outline some of the different options that were presented at the Planning Commission meeting. And to his credit, you know, he was like Roger, he was put on the spot in that Planning Commission meeting to make a decision without having the time to weigh it all. So he was glad that he had the time to think some of this stuff over, and we had the chance to meet, have some really good conversation and discussions about his options, and really explain what all they all meant. And so we did come to a compromise on this, where with the addition of a developmental lot agreement to treat this as one lot, and then also some changes to the design to just shift the proposed oversized garage on the property, we were able to come to a compromise and find a plan that worked not only for the applicant, but also worked for our zoning regulations and worked for the neighborhood as well. So with that, we would recommend approval of the oversized garage. I'd be happy to show you the new site plan if you so desire. And we would recommend approval with the stipulations as outlined in the staff report.
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
if I could get Kip to put up that revised site plan.
Of course.
Do you have the one that shows the landscaping?
No, I do not actually, but we have that in the file.
Okay.
That was not attached. But there is landscaping that has been proposed with this, and I can kind of illustrate it on here if you'd like.
So some of the things that we did, by creating a developmental lot agreement, now the property owner gets to use the lot the way he originally proposed, which is primarily a garage, call it what it is, with an accessory dwelling unit. They're bringing forward a landscape plan to help buffer the appearance of it from the street. He will be resiting his existing home, and he will match that siting with the proposed garage and ADU. And in doing so, the garage is now recessed slightly from the front of the home, the siding matches, and we've got some buffering along the street. We can check all 3 boxes, and we're happy to say that the applicant was excellent to work with. I think we found a solution. I felt all of you trying to find something that would work, and we are recommending that you approve this with the stipulations as noted by Kip.
Thanks, Vicki. Haven?
So I understand there's a developmental agreement then, and so can the lot with the garage be sold separately?
Vicki?
So the developmental lot agreement would require that they be kept in single ownership. Now down the road, let's say that Dan no longer owns the lot and someone wants to buy it and they want to separate that out. They can vacate that developmental lot agreement, and then that new owner would have to address any land area regulations specific to the development of this lot, changing the ADU to a principal structure or a standalone single-family residence. For now, though, by doing the developmental lot agreement, it allows Dan to get a separate water and sewer extension from Patricia Street, instead of having to bore and trench across his property from the existing home to the garage, which would be a great intrusion into his land plan. So this is a win. It's a win for now, yet it still leaves his options open in the future if he should propose to sell the property down the road.
Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one question, and that's in the future. It says there's potential driveway on that garage side, the new garage side. With the developmental lot, does it still allow a separate driveway on, even though the properties are connected, does it still allow for that driveway?
Vicky?
Mr. Chair, similar to the utilities, when it is still two platted lots, they will be allowed separate approach locations and separate utility connections.
Okay, so that was my question. From an overall perspective of the garage itself, I've never been fond of this type of garage because it's a garage and then there's living quarters inside. And I'm concerned about going forward if it did get separated back out. There's no direct access to the home except go through the garage, and that's my stickler point. But I appreciate the fact that we've made changes to this, and it's allowed the applicant to come forward and meet the regulations, so I appreciate that.
All right, other questions or comments on this one? I just appreciate the applicant's patience. Oh, Vicky, did you have one, or Kip? I'm seeing some waving, sorry.
I think we're good. And
Okay.
we appreciate all the patience that you gave staff at our last meeting to get to the point where we set up the alternate meeting. And I think 15 minutes in, we were all singing Kumbaya, so thank you.
Brooke?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd be delighted to make a motion on this one to include the stipulations outlined in the staff report.
All right, Brooke made the motion to approve item 9 with the 4 stipulations.
I'll second it, but I believe we also have some more discussion.
And Vince seconded that motion. Chip, Fire Department.
Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify, there is a door that goes out from the living quarters to the outside, so it does meet building code, because that's a requirement from us in the building code, that there's a sliding door, glass door that goes outside. So just to clarify, it does meet all the current codes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the motion is on the floor to approve. Any other comments on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 10.
Yeah, good morning, Planning Commission. Happy Earth, Wind, and Fire Day. 23 PD 025 is going to be initial plan development to allow self-storage, rental, and retail sales facility complex. Here's the site. Consists of 7.47 acres of vacant land and is located southeast of the Shelby Avenue and East Stumer Road intersection. The site is zoned general commercial with a PD overlay. Future land use shows mixed-use commercial. Major street plan shows Catherine Boulevard as a principal arterial, Stumer as a proposed collector somewhere down the line. Here's the site plan. The applicant is proposing a 15,688 square foot warehousing facility, a 3-story, 94,764 gross square foot multi-purpose rental and retail facility, and 6 mini storage facilities that vary from 2,000 square feet to 2,500 square feet. The applicant has yet to provide elevations and signage. Both will be required at upon submittal of a final plan development. Self-storage facilities require fencing around the perimeter of the facility or the property. The applicant has notified staff an exception to waive this requirement will be submitted upon submittal of the final plan development. Staff recommends approval of 23 PD 25 with stipulations. The applicant and I are in the audience for questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Vicky?
If I might, we appreciate that the applicants put us on notice that they're going to be requesting an exception to the screening requirement. And in return, we just want to note that Catherine Boulevard is a major gateway into our city and a part of the Heartland Express. And the aesthetic appeal of development from the viewscape of Catron Boulevard is extremely important to the integrity of the visual corridor into this section of Rapid. Just across the street on the south side is out in Pennington County. And so if there is going to be a provision to request that fencing be waived, we're certainly going to want to see some robust landscaping to ensure that that aesthetic appeal is secured. I'd also like to note that there are currently waiting lists for some uses in town. You have to wait to get your child into a child care. You have to wait to get into affordable housing. And there's waiting lists for storage units. And there has been a big push in the community to get more storage units in areas that do have residential components close by. This is one of those areas. So I think the land use is appropriate. We certainly look at what commercial should be along our gateway. This property is somewhat difficult to get to. Obviously, no access from Catron Boulevard. You have to come in on 5th and then go east on Stumer, circle around back of the other fast food places and uses, and then you find this property. And as a result, the original property owner has had difficulty marketing it for maybe more upscale retail, additional restaurant type uses. This seems to be a good use for that property because of its remote location, and certainly one that build it and they shall come because of our lack of storage units that are available for rent in the community right now. We are hoping that you will support this. We just kind of wanted to put you and the neighborhood on notice, and we look forward to working with the applicant on the final plan development, and in particular, we'll be looking at what that buffering is along Catron Boulevard.
Thank you, Vicki. Any questions or comments on this one? Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a comment. For somebody who lives in this neighborhood, I hope they put an upscale restaurant in there. We have enough fast food places, and this part of town really needs something like that really badly. So that's just a comment.
Vince?
I agree, Karen. As a matter of fact, I've had numerous neighbors who request the same thing.
All right. Any comments on the storage and rental facility?
Move that.
All right. Mike Gallagher made the motion to approve with stipulations. Second. And Karen seconded the motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Takes us to the end of our regular agenda. Vicki, anything for us today?
Oh, just one announcement. The guy standing at the lectern, you all know him as Cool and Groovy Alex Osborne. He has tendered his resignation. He's been with us a year, but he's going back home. So we wish him the very best. We've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know and work with Alex, and he's a hoot. It'll be hard to replace him.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your work. Vince?
Yes, thank you, Alex. And by the way, did I see you on the Food Network at a ramen restaurant recently?
Yeah, and the local news saving a cat. It was a big day Friday. Yeah.
That's it. The Food Channel and the Animal Channel.
So I'm not going back home. I'm going to Hollywood. They called me up.
He typically has a cape that he wears around the office.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service. I appreciate it.
Kelly's got something. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a quick question for Vicki and staff. Earlier, Haven had brought up a topic that we've talked about quite a few times over the years, and that's common space or green belts in developments. What would be the starting point, or where would that originate if that were to change in the future? Not necessarily a formal park, but just even a common area. Is that a public-driven jump off, or is that from city, from staff, or could Planning Commission play a part in that?
Typically, it starts with City Council. We do have new members, so bear with us. We are significantly understaffed and only getting worse before we get better. But our main goal is to take some hard looks. The requirement, changing the ordinance to allow the city to require the dedication of parkland at some threshold is on the to-do list. Prior to this last election, the majority of city council supported that endeavor. But it's hard. It's hard because that's a cost to the developers. They're trying to bring their projects in. Obviously, they have to make money at doing it. But they also realize that by creating these pocket parks in residential areas, it actually increases the value of the lots that they're proposing to sell. So then it's a collaboration between the developer and the city Parks and Rec department to see who's going to build the actual amenities and then who's going to maintain it.
Right.
We've had these discussions the last couple of years. They've really kind of gathered some speed. Stay tuned. It's on the to-do list. I think that as our city is growing and the rate that we're growing, it's time that we start bringing this forward for formal action. And I'm getting the impression, even from the new members, that this is something that's being supported. I don't know if Jess could add to that or not.
That's great to hear. Appreciate that. I mean, you know, other communities, we kind of live in a bubble in South Dakota. We're so far away and protected, and that's awesome. But, you know, you see other communities, you know, putting their foot down and driving this thing, saying, I get it, cost is always an issue. It's business is business. But the city and us, we hold the reins to sort of, you know, put those requirements out there. So I hope it happens at some level, at least a starting point. That'd be nice.
Mr. Chair?
Vicky?
As I mentioned earlier, whenever a developer comes in and they're asking for financial assistance through a TIF application, and we do receive several of those, that opens up the discussion too. And in many instances, if there's money available in the TIF, the developer is more than willing to include that dedication of land as a part of that TIF application. So they recover that lot cost, and then the TIF pays for it instead of the city. Then it gets put on the to-do list of the Parks and Rec department and becomes a CIP project as to when they can come in and put amenities. In the meantime, it just serves as open space for the families to use.
Mike Quasney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a difficult problem because Rapid City has its own problems in that a piece of property here versus other parts of the state goes for a large amount of money. So when we start talking affordable housing and trying to put this all together, it's a problem that isn't going to be fixed very quickly. And I've stated many times that I wish we had more park space. But either way, the cost is whether we take it in as a city and we get more taxes, or we take it and give it to the developer. Either way, there's costs involved, and it really causes problems for affordable housing. So it's a difficult problem to go and move forward with. So I can appreciate where the city is and the developers as well.
Councilman Ham?
Yeah, and for you who haven't met me, I just want to take a second in case I don't get to talk to each of you. I appreciate you guys' efforts here. I know John and Pat and I are all appreciative of what you guys go through. I wanted to just touch on something that has nothing to do with what we've talked about here today, but rather the hope-centered concept that you guys put forth to the council. I wanted you to, just as a liaison for the council, I wanted you guys to appreciate that we understood why you put it forth the way you did, and it had little to do with the presentation that you got. We got a different perspective when it came to the council as far as what we could do, and the decisions that we were making were based entirely on our constituents and how we didn't want to put them at risk. So it was a tough situation, and the challenge with that was multifold, but I wanted you guys to appreciate it. We weren't against anything that you guys had done. And to the concept that you guys just spoke to, I think topography, I'm sure Vicky would speak to this for weeks on end if she was given the opportunity. Topography here is a little different than our only competition, or not really competition, but comparables. Oftentimes we're compared to Sioux Falls. You all have been to Sioux Falls. You appreciate it's a little different place. It's always going to be a little different from demand and some of the challenges we just went through this morning. They're just not as present in those kind of locations. So it's more expensive to develop. It's more expensive to purchase. There's more demand for people who appreciate a landscape that's West River versus East River in the Black Hills region. So you guys have a really interesting and challenging job as we do grow fast in the coming probably 20 years. And my hope is that Vicky's here for the majority of that, so we'll stay healthy. Okay. So appreciate all of you guys. And if I don't get to say hi, I'm going to try and catch you before you all go. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Brooke, I'll go back to you.
Mr. Chairman,
All right. Motion to adjourn by Brooke. Vince seconded it. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, you bet.
Thanks. Jesse,
Yes, Karen.
Boom. Okay. Very good.
Nice to meet you.
Haven step.
Thank you very much for doing that. Appreciate you.